Good evening and welcome to today's daily war report on the war in Iran for March 19th, 2026. Today's biggest development is not just that the fighting continues, it's that the fight it is that the fighting has moved into deeper energy structures, and that changes the meaning of the conflict for the entire world. What began as a military confrontation is now becoming an economic war with global consequences. Reuters reporters today Reuters reported today that Israel's strike on Iran's South Pars gas field is and processing hub, followed by Iran's retaliatory strikes on energy sites across the region, marks the most serious energy escalation of the war so far. The significance of the South Pars cannot be overstated. And let me get South Pars up here for you guys. I apologize. Give me a second. Okay, let's continue. Hi. Yep, somebody's there. I'm sorry about that, Miss Jessica. Just had to get some things straight there real fast, and I apologize about that. That's the drawbacks of doing a live show sometimes. Sometimes things don't go as intended. Let's see. And this didn't go as intended. So we'll move right on with that. We're not even going to worry about that. Here we go. All right. The significance of the South Pars cannot be overstated. South Pars is not just another facility, it is tied to the world's largest offshore gas reserve. And Reuters says it provides roughly 70 to 75% of Iran's gas supply. Associated Press similarly described it as a core lifeline for Iran's electricity, heating, and domestic energy system. So when South Pars is hit, this is not just about damaging an adversary's economy. It is an attack on the fuel that keeps the homes heated, lights on, factories running, and the state functioning. So it looks like Israel's escalating this thing to what they want, total destruction of Iran. This is what makes this phase of the war different. Striking military targets is one thing, striking energy arteries is another. Once both sides begins once both sides begin attacking fuel production, refineries, export hubs, and shipping routes, the war stops being just a battlefield story and becomes a story about inflation, blackouts, transportation costs, and household pressures across multiple continents. Reuters, AP, and other outlets all point to this energy turn as a major escalation between Iran and Israel in the United States because the Gulf is central to both oil and gas markets. Iran answered by targeting Israeli energy infrastructures as well. Reuters reported that an Iranian strike hit Haifa oil refinery area, hit the Haifa oil refinery area, causing fires in two locations inside the complex and a short-lived power disruption through Israeli, though Israeli officials said the infrastructure damage was limited and the power was largely restored quickly. Even where the immediate damage is contained, the message is clear. Iran is signaling that Israeli energy and industrial sites are now part of the war map. And this is not saying, excuse me, and this is not staying confined to Iran and Israel. Reports today says Iran attacks also hit or affected energy facilities elsewhere in the Gulf region, with major concerns focused on Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG hub, and other regional sites. The Guardian reported that damage to facilities tied to a substantial share of Qatar's energy export capacity raised fears of long-term disruption to global LNG supply. This matters because LNG is not just a regional commodity. It is central to power. It is central to power generation and heating markets in Europe and in Asia. This means that the war is now threatening both sides of the energy equation. Oil is obviously the headline because drivers feel it quickly at the pump, but natural gas is just as important because it affects electricity generation, industrial production, fertilizer, petrochemicals, and heating. A war that disrupts both oil routes and gas infrastructure is more dangerous economically than a conflict that hits only one of those sectors. This is one reason analysts are treating this moment as a broader energy security crisis, not just a Middle East war update. The Straits of Hormuz is central in this. Reuters reported today that Iran is even considering levying transit fees on ships in the strait, while European countries and Japan issued a joint statement saying they are prepared to help ensure safe passage and stabilize energy markets. When outside powers are discussing coordinated actions around Hormuz, that tells you the risk has moved beyond theory. The world is treating shipping through that waterway as a live strategic emergency. Why does the Strait of Hormuz matter so much? Because if shipping is blocked, slowed down, militarized, or made too expensive to ensure the cost of energy, the cost of energy rises before actual supply fully disappears. Markets price fear immediately. Tanker owners, insurers, commodity traders, airlines, and manufacturers all react before ordinary people even realize what is happening. Reuters and other outlets have reported that the war has already disrupted shipping and driven a major oil and gas volatility. This is exactly what we're seeing today in the markets. Uh, Reuters video reporting said oil prices rose again after Iran attacked energy facilities across the Middle East. The Guardian reported oil nearly rose 10% intraday before settling at $110 a barrel, while gas prices in Europe and the UK more than doubled from late February levels. Al Jazeera reported analysts no longer see $200 as far fetched in Hormuz, if the Strait of Hormuz remains affected or closed, basically. For ordinary people, this is where the war becomes personal. Higher crude oil prices do not stay on financial screens. They hit gas stations, trucking, groceries, airline tickets, shipping costs, plastics, fertilizer, and utility bills. A substantial energy shock acts like a tax on daily life. The Guardian reported analysts warning that prolonged high energy prices could help push inflation higher and increase the chance of tighter monetary policy. In plain language, that means more expensive living and less room for households already stretched thin. For poorer countries, the danger is even sharper. Wealthier nations can absorb some shock through reserves, subsidies, or stronger currencies. Lower income import lower income lower income dependent countries, low income import dependent countries cannot. When oil, LNG, and food transport costs rise together, governments face pressure on electricity supply. Public budgets and public budgets and political stability. This is why energy warfare in the Gulf can trigger unrest far from the actual combat zone. This is a reasonable inference from the global role of the Gulf, of the Gulf's energy supply and the market disruptions reported today. There is also a military significance here. Once energy facilities become accepted targets and the war becomes harder to contain, pipelines, export terminals, power systems, ports, refineries, storage depots, and tankers all become vulnerable. Every strike forces governments and companies to spread their defense across a huge network of civilian adjacent infrastructure. That rises the chances of accidental environmental damage, wider blackouts, and a supply shock that can go well beyond the intended military effect. Reuters report Reuters, Reuters reporting on South Pars, Afia, and Hormuz all that point to that widening vulnerability. Shit, it's disturbing. So the bottom line for today, my people, is this: the war has entered a more dangerous phase, and it's doing that every day, obviously, because both sides are no longer focused on only soldiers, launchers, and command sites. They're targeting systems that power economies and daily life. When energy becomes a battlefield, the consequences spread to every country that buys fuel, every industry that depends on transport, and every family already struggling with prices. This is why today's escalation matters so much. It's not just about who can hit harder, it's about rather the conflict is now is now evolving into a broader energy shock war.